Jubilee is a young girl of Chinese descent who was adopted by an American couple. When her foster parents discover she has superhuman powers, her stepfather decides to contact the Mutant Control Agency. Jubilee has no intention of joining any agency, so she runs away. She is followed by Sentinels, huge robots who hunt mutants. Fortunately, the girl is saved by 4 X-Men. Storm, who can fly and control the weather. Rogue, who can also fly and take over the powers of others just by touching them. Cyclops, who is like a discount version of Superman. He shoots laser from his eyes, but nothing else. And there's Gambit, who can make objects explode. He always carries a deck of cards, which he uses as his weapon. Jubilee's power is very similar to Gambit's, although it's much more sparkly. The X-Men take Jubilee to their secret base. There, she meets their leader, Professor Charles Xavier, also known as Professor X. He has exceptional telepathic abilities and runs a school for young mutants. Jubilee also meets the other X-Men. Jean Grey, who, like Professor Xavier, has enormous telepathic and telekinetic abilities. Morph, who is a shapeshifter and can impersonate anyone he wants. Beast, who is the epitome of the saying that appearances can be deceiving. He is the most gentle and eloquent of the mutants. The last of the X-Men, but definitely not the least, is Wolverine, also known as Logan, a short-tempered and short-statured daredevil, whose skeleton is made of adamantium, the hardest metal alloy in the world. He also has incredible healing abilities and deadly claws popping out from his wrists. The X-Men discover that the Mutant Control Agency is not on their side, quite the opposite. The agency works with the Sentinels and together they strive to destroy them. Therefore, our heroes attack the agency's headquarters and delete the data, allowing the identification of mutants. Unfortunately, during this mission, Beast is captured and Morph is killed. Wolverine blames Cyclops for Morph's death and takes it out on his car.
Tell Cyclops I made him a convertible.
He is also jealous of Cyclops' relationship with Jean, with whom he's in love. And that's the origin story of this famous meme. In a burst of fury, Logan storms off to the winter regions where he quickly becomes a hero to the local people. But the idyllic mood is disturbed by his old enemy, Sabretooth. For some reason, the men think that the world is too small for the two of them, so a fight breaks out. Wolverine outsmarts his opponent and decides to end his vacation. Meanwhile, Jubilee, Storm and Gambit are just starting their vacation. They were fooled into thinking that there was a beach, drinks and a nice company waiting for them on an island called Genosha, but it turns out to be an ambush. The mutants are captured by the Sentinels and forced to work as slaves to build a dam to power the Sentinels' factory. Special colors prevent them from using their powers, but Gambit manages to escape. He then frees Jubilee, Storm and the other mutants. They get rid of the colors and Storm destroys the dam and the water floods the Sentinels' factory. The other X-Men arrive just in time to save their friends and take them back home, or rather, to what's left of it. Colossus, a mutant from Russia, is spotted nearby, so it's no surprise he becomes #1 suspect. However, it is soon revealed that the culprit behind the destruction is none other than Juggernaut.
I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
He is Professor X's half-brother who for some reason hates him. Even though Wolverine is back and the X-Men face Juggernaut as a team, they are unable to defeat him. But finally, they come up with the idea to take off his helmet. Now, Jean Grey can use her powers and take control of this huge bastard. After dealing with Juggernaut, the X-Men begin rebuilding their headquarters. Beast isn't involved as he's still in custody. The Blue Giant didn't escape because he wants to show people that not all mutants are evil. He is convinced that he will be acquitted. During the court hearing, Beast gives a fiery speech on tolerance, but it doesn't help his case. Mutant hatred is so strong that he is sent to prison. Rogue, on the other hand, is a prisoner of her own powers. When she touches someone, she not only takes over their powers, but also drains their energy. This prevents her from having close relationships with people, and she would like to finally get laid. When she learns that a doctor in Scotland has built a machine which can turn mutants into normal people, she immediately flies across the ocean. Rogue has no idea that the doctor was killed and his body was taken over by Mystique, a mutant who can take on the appearance of others. What's more, the Doctor's machine has been modified at the request of Mystique's commander, the mighty Apocalypse, and now it turns mutants into his minions. Fortunately, Rogue manages to escape. Apocalypse turns some other mutants into his subordinates and sends them to cause chaos and destruction. The X-Men cannot allow this, so they go into battle with Apocalypse and his horsemen. During the battle, there's a scene in which we can truly admire the amazing skills of the artists. Eventually, Apocalypse and his horsemen realize they have no chance against X-Men and they run away. We are almost done with the first season, and that's when time travel becomes a big part of the story. In the episodes titled Days of Future Past, a mutant named Bishop travels from the year 2055 to the 1990s to stop Gambit from assassinating a US senator, because this event ultimately led to the Sentinels taking over the world and resulted in death of many X-Men. After traveling back in time, our Terminator goes to the X-Men's headquarters. Most probably, he wouldn't be able to convince them that what he says is true if it wasn't for Xavier's mind-reading skills. Professor enhances his powers using a device called Cerebro and confirms that Bishop isn't a liar. The X-Men decide that Gambit should stay with Bishop and Wolverine, while the rest of the team will go to Washington and guard the senator. Gambit, however, wants to prove that he is innocent and has no intention of killing the senator. He escapes from his guardians and comes to Washington. There, it turns out that Mystique is the one who wants to kill the senator. She changes into Gambit and, on Apocalypse's orders, tries to frame the X-Men for this murder. However, the real Gambit suddenly appears and comes to the senator's rescue. 1 second later, Bishop also appears and, unable to decide which Gambit is real, he decides to kill both of them. Fortunately, Rogue intervenes at the last moment and sends him back to the future. But the situation still isn't under control. We see the senator is now kidnapped by Magneto. He is a powerful mutant who can manipulate magnetic fields. Magneto and Xavier are eternal rivals, even though they used to be friends. The former wants to subjugate people to mutants, while the latter believes they can live together in peace. Magneto intends to kill the senator to start a war between humans and mutants. At the last moment, he is stopped by the Sentinels. They take the senator to their commander, Master Mold, who wants to replace the brains of political leaders with computers. This way, the Sentinels would take over the world. Surprisingly, Magneto forms an alliance with the X-Men. Together, they attack the Sentinels' headquarters and save the senator. The guy's name is Robert Kelly, and he is very grateful to mutants. He convinces his numerous followers that mutants deserve respect. At his request, Beast is released from prison, and we get a happy ending. Senator Kelly, who's supportive of the X-Men, wins the presidential election, but the country is still hit by a wave of violent protest against mutants. What's worse, it turns out that Morph, the X-Men who supposedly died in the first season, is alive. Why is this bad news? Because he was saved by Mr. Sinister, who turned him hostile towards his former companions. Morph uses his ability to change his appearance and causes chaos among the X-Men. Even Professor Xavier falls for his tricks. Convinced that Magneto is in danger, Xavier goes to Antarctica to help him. Beast realizes that something is wrong. But it is only thanks to Wolverine's developed sense of smell that the X-Men unmask Morph. However, he still manages to escape them. Sometime later, Morph sends a message that he wants to return to the X-Men and asks for help. Logan has always had a lot of sympathy for him, so he's not going to say no. He, Cyclops and Jean come to Morph's rescue, but it is a trap. Mr. Sinister and his minions attack our heroes and kidnap Jean. Meanwhile, Professor X reaches Antarctica, meets Magneto, and also falls into a trap. Both men are caught by an avalanche, which takes them to the Savage Land. On the one hand, they lose their superhuman powers there, but on the other, Xavier can walk again. Magneto knows this place well because he once built a citadel here and created his own mutants, including one that resembles a frog. Now, however, the mutants have a different master, and they take Magneto and Xavier prisoner. Ka-Zar, a guy who looks like Tarzan, comes to their aid. Mutants have kidnapped his Jane and the entire tribe, so he counts on the Professor and Magneto to help him free them. They enter the citadel through a secret passage, but to their surprise, there are mutants inside. Ka-Zar escapes with his tiger, but Magneto and Xavier fall into the hands of their enemies. We also meet their new master. It turns out to be Mr. Sinister, who has just brought Jean to the Citadel. Sinister summons a mutant who has a somewhat familiar name, Sauron. His power allows him to take control of the Professor's mind. Mr. Sinister then uses Xavier to contact the other X-Men and lead them into a trap. The X-Men realize that something's fishy, but they have no choice, so they launch a rescue mission. When they arrive, enemies are already waiting for them. Unlike them, our heroes can't use powers, so they are easily outmatched. Wolverine manages to escape, but the rest of the team is captured. Mr. Sinister intends to use their DNA to create powerful mutants and expand his army. Logan meets Ka-Zar, they join forces and attack the Citadel. They free the X-Men and then destroy the machines that were used to take away their powers. Now, after regaining powers, the X-Men crush the enemies and Mr. Sinister himself is broken into small pieces. So this is how the second season ends. I left out another time travel story because it focused on Bishop and the X-Men didn't play a major role in it. In the third season, it's time for the Phoenix Saga. Professor Xavier keeps having dreams about a strange woman who asks him for help. He decides to send the X-Men to the Eagle 1 space station to investigate. Wolverine and company arrive there, but before they know it, the crew puts them to sleep. Turns out they're all under the control of an alien dude named Eric the Red. He is a representative of the Shi'ar, a super advanced race who have mastered the art of intergalactic travel. Eric the Red instructs the crew to dump the X-Men's bodies into the void of space. Luckily, Jean remained conscious and uses her last ounce of strength to save herself and her companions. The X-Men regain consciousness and attack Eric. In the heat of the battle, the station is destroyed and the enemy escapes. The X-Men rescue the crew and head back to Earth. Unfortunately, the autopilot does not work and the cabin doesn't protect against radiation. Jean believes that only she can resist the radiation and fly the shuttle to Earth safely. They indeed reach the Earth, but to say it was done in a safe manner would be a lie. Additionally, something strange is happening to Jean. Then she loses consciousness, ends up in hospital and claims she doesn't remember much. Strange things are also happening to Professor Xavier. Someone takes control of his mind and creates an astral projection that attacks the X-Men. They repel the attack and try to help their leader. Charles fears that his mind might still be under enemy control and travels to Scotland. There, he is cared for by his close friend, Moira, and her partner, Banshee. Suddenly, a scantily clad woman named Lilandra also appears there. She is the one who haunted Xavier in his dreams. She explains that she needs his help because her brother, the Emperor of the Shi'ar, wants to obtain an ancient crystal that will allow him to take control of the universe. Lilandra worries that her brother's actions will lead to total destruction. The woman is wanted by Eric the Red. He hired Juggernaut and Black Tom Cassidy to help him catch her. The mercenaries deal with the weakened Xavier and capture Lilandra. They deliver her to Eric in exchange for $10 million. When Xavier recovers after the attack, he calls the X-Men for help. Then he contacts Lilandra telepathically and learns where she is being held captive. It turns out that Banshee and Tom Cassidy are brothers, and Lilandra is held at their family's stronghold. On the way there, the mystery behind Banshee's name is revealed. Our heroes reach the castle, but before the fight is settled, another character appears. It's Gladiator, the commander of the Shi'ar army. The guy is extremely powerful, and the fate of the X-Men appears grim. At this critical moment, Jean becomes possessed once again. She takes the form of a phoenix and reaches the castle in the blink of an eye. Her power is so enormous that even Gladiator stands no chance against her. Jean becomes the legendary Phoenix, the guardian of the ancient Crown crystal. She transports the X-Men to the spaceship where she keeps the crystal. There, they are surprised by a group of space pirates. The crystal is stolen and Cyclops is kidnapped. Wolverine asks Jean why she didn't take out the attackers. She doesn't answer him, but we know that she didn't react because the pirate commander, Corsair, is Cyclops' father. Both men are unaware of this relationship. Corsair stole the crystal to get near the Shi'ar Emperor and now wants to use Cyclops to kill him. This way he would avenge the death of his wife, who was also Cyclops' mother. The Emperor lets them into his headquarters, but the entire mission ends in failure. Corsair and Cyclops would have faced certain death if Jean hadn't come to their aid by teleporting herself and the X-Men. The mutants fight the Shi'ar army, but they are unable to recover the crystal. The Emperor activates its power and begins the process of creating a new universe. This process takes place inside the crystal, which, like a black hole, begins to suck in the existing universe. The Emperor's subjects are surprised by this development and join forces with the X-Men to fight for the fate of the galaxy. But only Jean, in her Phoenix form, can save the galaxy. She says goodbye to Cyclops and sacrifices herself once again. Jean takes the crystal to the core of the sun, where no one will find it. In doing so, she vanishes from existence. The X-Men cannot be sure that she will rise from the ashes one day, so they start to mourn her. Cyclops is devastated and decides to leave the group. However, when he visits the orphanage where he grew up and helps the children there, he comes to his senses.
This is a damn fine cup of coffee.
And returns to the X-Men. There is another guy who also returns, Iceman. He is a rebellious soul and left the group years ago due to a conflict with Professor X. He is currently looking for his wife, who has gone missing. It turns out that the woman actually left him and secretly joined a group of mutants called X-Factor. Interestingly, this group includes another relative of Cyclops, this time a brother named Havoc. Of course, both are unaware of this relationship. Finally, the day comes when the X-Men find Jean. The woman is alive, but still under the influence of the Phoenix. On the one hand, Cyclops is happy that his beloved is alive, but on the other, he is worried whether she will ever recover. Gambit takes him to a bar so he can forget about his problems for a while. After the meeting, Cyclops witnesses an attack on a singer who was performing at the bar. Our hero saves the damsel in distress, and she is clearly charmed by him. Her name is Dazzler, and she asks Cyclops to show up at the bar the next night to keep her safe. Jean is jealous when she learns about this, and to make matters worse, news of her incredible power reaches a group of thugs called the Inner Circle. They come to the conclusion that by controlling Jean, they will be able to control the Phoenix. So they sneak into her dreams like Leo DiCaprio in Inception and start messing with her head. Jean enters the bar just as Dazzler kisses Cyclops. This makes her extremely angry, and the whole situation makes it easier for Mastermind from the Inner Circle. Soon, however, it is Phoenix who takes complete control over Jean, transforming her into Dark Phoenix. She then attacks both the Inner Circle and the X-Men who have come to save her. Jean doesn't kill the X-Men, even though she could have done so easily, leaving mutants hopeful that she can still be saved. They are trying to take control of her mind, just like Mastermind did. They use a special device for this purpose and manage to contact her. Jean asks Wolverine to kill her because this is the only way they can defeat the Phoenix. Logan is unable to do so and the Phoenix regains control. The X-Men have no chance in physical fight against such a powerful opponent, but fortunately Xavier proves his worth at last. He He uses his telepathic powers and faces the Phoenix in a battle of the minds. The battle is fierce, but Professor calls Jean for help. Their combined strength allows them to triumph, and Jean regains control of her body and mind. Then Lilandra shows up with her guards, and the celebration is ruined. The Shi'ar claim that Jean must be killed, because the Phoenix will sooner or later take control of her mind again, and when this happens, the world will face destruction. Professor X demonstrates the power of his mind again. He penetrates Lilandra's mind and discovers that in the Shi'ar tradition there is such a thing as an honorable duel. The Shi'ar have no choice but to accept the X-Men's challenge. A duel takes place on the moon, but before the outcome is reached, Jean takes matters into her own hands. To get rid of the Phoenix, she kills herself. Cyclops is furious and blames Lilandra for everything. But then, the Phoenix appears again. This time, however, she is peaceful. She explains that after connecting with Jean, she discovered emotions for the first time. This made her want to feel as many of them as possible, and as we know from the social media, the easiest way was to arouse the negative ones. Eventually, she learned what is love. She offers to bring Jean back to life in exchange for a piece of the X-Men's life flame. Each mutant gives up a part of their flame without hesitation, and Jean comes back to life.
Jean. Oh, Jean.
In Season 4, we finally learn the reason why Juggernaut hates Xavier, his adoptive brother. Juggernaut's father married Charles' mother for money and treated Charles better than his own son. Young Juggernaut didn't take too kindly to this, so his father sent him to boarding school. Juggernaut blames Xavier for destroying his relationship with his father. And talking of Xavier's enemies, Magneto makes a comeback. He's fed up with humans' intolerance towards mutants, so he built a settlement on an asteroid. He invites those with superhuman powers to join him. He also puts nuclear weapons into space. Magneto constantly relies on a guy named Fabian Cortez, who acts as his power source, recharging him when needed. However, this dependency eventually backfires as Cortez takes advantage of the situation. He betrays Magneto, takes away his power, and sends him off in an escape pod towards certain death. Worse still, he blames everything on the X-Men and takes Gambit prisoner. He becomes the leader of the mutants, but fortunately one of them, Amelia Vought, doesn't trust Cortez and soon discovers that he is lying. She obtains surveillance video revealing Cortez's involvement in Magneto's disappearance and shares it with other mutants. Cortez loses his position as quickly as he gained it and in desperation activates nuclear warheads, sending them towards the Earth. Xavier is unable to stop all the missiles, but thankfully it turns out that Magneto is alive. The Earth's magnetic field saved him, so now he can return the favor and save our planet. Magneto then catches his would-be assassin, traps him, and destroys the asteroid. Unfortunately, Cortez is saved by Apocalypse at the last moment. The X-Men finally have a moment to relax and decide to take a well-deserved break in Germany. They go skiing and make friends with a German mutant, Nightcrawler. Then we get another storyline straight out of Terminator. The Machines, meaning the Sentinels, send two assassins to the past to kill Professor Xavier. This sets off a chain of events where the Sentinels, led by Master Mold, take over the world. And that's when our time traveler, Bishop, steps into action. He is accompanied by his sister, Shard, and they are soon joined by Wolverine and Storm. But they aren't Wolverine and Storm we already know, because they come from an alternate timeline. In this alternate world, Logan and Storm are married, and the leader of the X-Men is Magneto. Nevertheless, they manage to save Xavier, and the Machines aren't clever enough to consider going back even further in time and trying again. After a successful mission, Bishop travels back to his own time, but something goes wrong. He gets sent to a place called the Axis of Time, where he meets Bender, a rather peculiar guy. The reason why Bishop failed to return to his own time is Apocalypse. In the year 3999, Apocalypse faced a man named Cable. He stole Cable's time machine and activated it just when Bishop was traveling back to his time. This created a disturbance, and now Shard must travel to the 1990s, the show's main timeline, to find her brother. She arrives just in time to stop Mr. Sinister from kidnapping Professor Xavier. However, Sinister's gang manages to capture Jean Grey, and this all happens right after her wedding to Cyclops. Sinister works for Apocalypse, who haunts the Shi'ar Empire and kidnaps Lilandra's sister. She has abilities similar to those of Jean and Xavier, so the professor guesses that Apocalypse may try to capture another person with such abilities. And that's precisely what happens. Despite Wolverine and Shard keeping watch, a woman named Psylocke is kidnapped. To make matters worse, it turns out that Magneto is also working for Apocalypse. Meanwhile, in the year 3999, Cable gets to a secret base where there is a time machine. He travels back to the 1990s and informs the X-Men about Apocalypse's secret chamber, which grants him immortality. The chamber is located in the middle of a pyramid, so Cable and the mutants travel back in time to ancient Egypt to destroy it. Unfortunately, Apocalypse is one step ahead of them. He prepared an ambush and Xavier is abducted. Now Apocalypse has enough psychic mutants to destroy the current world, in which there is a balance between good and evil. In its place, Apocalypse wants to create his own world where no one will be able to defeat him and where he will reign supreme and remain invincible. Magneto helped Apocalypse only to learn the details of his plan. When he knows everything he wanted to know, he decides to attack. However, he didn't think this through well, because he only has Mystique on his side, so they are doomed to failure. And that's when Bishop finally steps in. The mutants captured by Apocalypse landed in the exact same place as him, so Bishop has a chance to free them. Additionally, Cable and the X-Men come to the rescue of Magneto and Mystique. The final battle between good and evil takes place. Psychic mutants use the power of their minds, and Apocalypse is defeated. In the last scenes of the 4th season, Xavier and Magneto once again thank each other for their help. Cable returns to the future after a successful mission, not realizing that he's just met his father, who, of course, is Cyclops. And the freak from the axis of time turns out to be Immortus, the Lord of Time. The 5th season welcomes us with an alien invasion, which is repelled by the X-Men. Then we get another story involving aliens whose leader takes Storm as his wife. Unfortunately, it turns out that he is a tyrant who plans to conquer Earth. That's why the X-Men have to repel another invasion. Things get a little more interesting in the 5th episode. Fabian Cortez is looking for a body that could be taken over by Apocalypse, who is trapped in the astral plane. Frustrated by Cortez's lack of success, Apocalypse decides to just take over his body. We also have an episode in which Wolverine joins Captain America in a fight against the Red Skull, and an episode in which we learn the origin story of Mr. Sinister. We visit Victorian England, where Dr. Nathaniel Essex conducts crazy experiments. One of his subordinates, none other than Jack the Ripper, supplies him with mutant organs. Essex uses them to turn into a mutant himself, and that's how Mr. Sinister is created. But the really important stuff takes place in the final episode. Henry Gyrich is a guy who hates mutants. He constantly fights to limit their civil rights. Xavier tries to combat his harmful views at every turn. During one of his speeches, Gyrich attacks the professor and uses a special device to reveal to the world that he's a mutant, something he had been hiding for so many years. The attack has disastrous consequences for Xavier's already poor health. The only thing that still keeps him alive is his mind, but he will eventually give up if the X-Men don't get in touch with Lilandra, because only the Shi'ar have technology advanced enough to save their leader. The problem is that no one but Xavier is able to contact Lilandra, and his powers are currently too weakened. The X-Men come up with the idea that perhaps Magneto, who commands electromagnetism, will be able to enhance Xavier's telepathic abilities. They go to Genosha, where Magneto gathers mutants who are fed up with constant acts of aggression from humans. X. The X-Men manage to convince him to help the dying Xavier.
How much do you love Charles Xavier?
How dare you ask me such a question? He was my only equal. I owe him my life.
Even though his army is ready to attack, and even though helping Xavier may cost him his own life, Magneto helps his greatest enemy and, at the same time, his only friend. The professor sends a message to Lilandra and regains consciousness. He thanks Magneto and each of the X-Men.
I am proud. Proud of you all. My X-Men.
Moments later, Lilandra comes and takes him to her place. At this point, the series ends, but the fate of Professor Xavier, his X-Men, and the other heroes of this world are to be continued.